This is Matrixlord 212, and I want to discuss Dr. Octopus, Otto Octavius. Now, as far as the movies go, I thought that Dr. Octopus was a way better villain than Green Goblin, and Sandman, and Venom, and Harry Osborn's Green Goblin and New Goblin. I thought that Doctor Octopus was the best villain of the movies, and still better than the Lizard too. Now, as far as the comics go, there have been a lot of really awesome Doctor Octopus appearances in Amazing Spider-Man and all the other comics. My first real experience with the comic with Dr. Octopus was Amazing Spider-Man 296. And in that, Otto Octavius had a phobia, had arachnophobia. He was afraid of Spider-Man, and petrified, deathly afraid. And Spider-Man found this out when he fought him, and he tried to do the right thing and get him to conquer his fear by letting him beat the crap out of him, so to speak, and believe, that he was, superior in a way. And I really like that issue a lot. Now, I'm not going to go into the order of every single Dr. Octopus appearance since my first experience with him in 296, but I'm going to say some highlights too that I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed when the character really got himself together and really became like powerful, superior Dr. Octopus, where he was just dressing up nice in suits. He even took on the Hulk with it, adamantium like arms, I think. And it was really awesome that he was like, I mean, he's a genius, so why not dress the best, really? And I never understood why he would dress up in that green, with the yellow goggles and look like a geek. I mean, when he had so much money and millions and everything from stealing and everything, and he could just dress in Armani suits and whatever. You know what I'm saying? So, I liked that part. Of Dr. Octopus. I also really liked when he had a girlfriend, and that girlfriend was Stunner. Now, Stunner was actually a woman that was hooked up to this machine. Like she was obese and she was hooked up to this machine, and she sort of had like her own avatar, so to speak, like a virtual reality, whatever, stunning body. And in the end, she, I guess, she died, but she didn't really die, but she got trapped in the avatar, I guess, body, and she was always Stunner. So now this is what they may do for bringing Dr. Octopus back into his body, what they did with Stunner, really. That's what I'm hoping, at least. And then there was another storyline where he was... What came first? I'm trying to think what storyline came first. There was the life-death storyline where, and this is very similar to the storyline that was in Amazing Spider-Man 700, so to speak, 698, 609, 700, because I'm going to say, is it 398 or 396? No, 386. In 386, the Vulture had used this device to steal the youth from Peter Parker, and at the end, like Spider-Man, and at the end, he stole his youth, and Spider-Man was left a senior citizen that when he took the mask off, you couldn't recognize him because he was a senior citizen. And, they showed, like, Peter Parker taking off the uniform and taking the bus, and he got beat up by, like, young kids, and he had spider sense, but he could not even react to it because he was so old. And it was really like depressing, those few panels. But then he got his youth back, and then the Vulture kept to, like a vampire, kept having to absorb people in order to be young, and he just wanted to stay young. And what happened was he wound up absorbing Richard and Mary Parker, which not really his parents, but android synthesoids that were created because of the genius of Harry Osborn. Now, Harry Osborn created Richard and Mary Parker because, one, he knew that Peter Parker was Spider-Man, and two, he kept setting all these traps for him that after he died, these traps sprung, and he really wanted to destroy Peter Parker's mental aspect, his well-being. He wanted to break him down into the depression. And the Vulture absorbed the synthesoids of the androids and became young for a while now. Okay, and the thing that I really enjoyed was this was Vulture's moment. This was the Vulture's Amazing Spider-Man 700 moment, where when he was young, he was a huge, huge threat to Peter Parker because he was so superior Vulture really, that he injected Peter Parker with a device like Spider-Man that was killing him, and Peter Parker could not figure out how to save himself. And it turns out that who saved him? Well, Otto Octavius. That's right. Dr. Octopus finally had Spider-Man where he wanted him. He saw he was dying. He removed the mask and realized, oh my God, this is Peter Parker. Now, because of a debt, feeling that Aunt May would be destroyed, that he died, Dr. Octopus did everything in his power to use his genius to save Peter Parker's life. And then, of course, he wanted to battle him, which he wound up dying. Now, Dr. Octopus had died. He was killed by the mark of Cain. Cain was a clone created by the Jackal of Peter Parker. Now, here's where things get really, really crazy, and Dan Slott's probably laughing. They had Calypso do some type of voodoo thing with the Hand Organization, and they brought Dr. Octopus back to life using voodoo, which was crazy. And he did return back to life without the memory of Peter Parker being Spider-Man. So that was crazy. I do enjoy the times of Tom McFarlane drawing the book, and Eric Larson and Mark Bagley, and the way they made Dr. Octopus look was great. And I did like it. I mean, Marvel really dipped their hand to see. I think they were testing the waters back then to see if any of Spider-Man's villains could become a huge threat to the Marvel Universe. And I think that's why they did storylines where Dr. Octopus basically took on the Hulk, and different things. So, lo and behold, years later, they made Norman Osborn take on the Marvel Universe, really, and kick the Avengers' butt, so to speak. So, it was done way before that, really. Certain writers had played around with the idea. But, he was one of my favorite villains, and I never really saw him as the biggest threat. I always seen the Green Goblin as the biggest threat. And why? Well, the Green Goblin did what no one else did. He killed Gwen Stacy. He killed Captain he killed Gwen Stacy. He killed Peter Parker's love. And I thought by him doing that, that gave him the title of the greatest threat and villain ever. Even though Dr. Octopus came first, the Green Goblin was the greatest threat. And, he did some crazy, crazy stuff. I mean, you could judge, well, who is really Peter Parker Spider-Man's greatest threat? I mean, is it Kraven the Hunter because he buried him in the cemetery? And this is what actually, believe it or not, that one event, Kraven's Last Hunt, made Peter Parker claustrophobic, where he just could not be into tight spaces after that. But of course, the Green Goblin did that at one point in time too. He buried him in the cemetery also. That continued, that storyline. That continued where, in different comics they touched on it. If you didn't know that about Spider-Man, that he was, after the event with Kraven the Hunter, he was claustrophobic. And they also touched on too, which was a nice touch by Dan Slott, was that Peter Parker doesn't drink, really. And when he does, it really screws up his spider sense, where it goes haywire, and he can't even, all the agility and everything is out the window. So it kind of like, was like he fought the Hobgoblin drunk and basically beat him anyway. But after that one battle, and early on that I read, Peter Parker, somebody put a drink in the punch, and he said that night after he almost died, he beat Hobgoblin, but he says, I can never drink because it screws up his powers, so to speak. So that is why he never drinks. Now, a reason why he never he made different types of web shooters was because when he was experimenting making new type of web shooters, someone was badly, there was like some type of explosion, I think, or something, and they became like some type of creature, and he felt responsible, and that's why he never did fool around with making web shooters and stuff, like different types of styles like he used to. And then they kind of used that for the clone storyline, where they were saying, well, the clone is the real Spider-Man because look at these impact webbing and all these other kind of webbing that he does, and only the true Peter Parker with the high school ring, which was the clone, that's the real Peter Parker. So like he defeated Venom where Peter Parker couldn't. He shot the impact webbing and down his throat, and he broke the bond with Eddie Brock and Venom, and the Skull Spider. He did so many other things too, like he beat a lot of villains like with ease. So, but of course Ben Reilly, the Skull Spider, was not the real Spider-Man. He was a clone, and that was yes, he was created by the Jackal, but that was really orchestrated by Norman Osborn that we saw, that was revealed in Spider-Man 25, which he beat the crap out of Ben Reilly, threw him off the building, and became dust. So, but that was another thing, how the Green Goblin is really a bigger threat, because besides his son, they always messed with the mental aspect of Peter Parker, and to make him believe for like 2 years that he was a clone and insignificant, and he had a life with Mary Jane, but then to throw him back into the mix and screw with his head again. I mean, that is why I really say that Norman Osborn is the main villain, because Norman Osborn wouldn't save Peter Parker; he would kill him. And Dr. Octopus has saved Peter Parker, and not only did he save Peter Parker, but he just about almost married. He almost married Aunt May, and he had a relationship with Aunt May, of course. So, other than that, I do love the character of Otto Octavius, Dr. Octopus, and of course later on, there's been different changes and stuff like that with, Amazing Spider-Man 600, where, Dr. Octopus finds out that, after getting a beating from Spider-Man all the time, he's going to lose the ability to, of his body. It's going to start failing. So, and there's been a lot of awesome storylines, with Dr. Octopus, but I just wanted to touch on that really, about like the good points, and I probably left out some other massive ones too, which I apologize. It's just I just got home after a long day and I'm pretty tired. So, but I did want to talk about Dr. Octopus and my love for the comics. I didn't like the joke that Jackal turned out to be. I mean, after putting him back into the comic after so long, it was like he was a joke with that whole alpha thing. I wasn't really crazy about that. Maybe he threw the Jackal in there so that way that's the way that Dr. Octopus is going to get a body back. I don't know. Or maybe, Peter Parker's going to go in a clone body. I don't know if he's still alive. But, I miss certain characters like Judas Traveler. I miss, there was some other characters too. Yeah, they're using, I think, the Lobo brothers, which was like werewolves. They're using that in Scarlet Spider, which Kane's Scarlet Spider now. I miss certain, Man Wolf, we haven't seen in a long time. That's J. Jonah Jameson's son. Because in a Moon Rock, he became like a werewolf, which that was really cool. I don't know if it would work in this day and age, but, I'm sure everything could. But Puma was a threat for a while. When, and then he had a debt that he had to pay to, Peter Parker, where he wanted to bind the Daily Bugle as a wedding present to Peter Parker and Mary Jane, and tried to make the newspaper positive for Spider-Man. But of course, that relationship went sour with Puma, where he's not really considered a good guy to Peter Parker. Don't consider him that. But anyway, there's been so many other ones like Silver Sable. Her dying and stuff, I'm not too crazy with that either. And other than that, there's been some doozy storylines with Mary Jane that I think John Byrne killed her off, and I wasn't happy with that one at all. And I wasn't definitely happy with. I guess this is turning out to videos that I'm not videos, comics that I wasn't happy with. So I wasn't happy when they did return Mary Jane. That after Spider-Man saved her, she didn't want to have nothing to do with Peter Parker. You know, it's like, you know, you went through all that, like a year where you were dead, and then now you save her and you want to be off to Hollywood with some new guy. Meanwhile, you're married. Like, what's going on with that? So I wasn't crazy about that. And storylines that really struck a nerve, of course, everybody knows the top one that's even more than Peter Parker dying was, I think it's really worse, where Peter Parker making a deal with the devil to save Aunt May's life and erase his marriage with Mary Jane. That will always be the all-time worst storyline that I can never accept. The thing that comes next has to be the clone storyline. Spectacular Spider-Man 226, is it? Or 228? I think it's 226, where Stuart Traynor did a test and he lied and he said that Peter Parker was a clone and Ben Reilly was the real one. That I almost threw up in my mouth, especially when Peter Parker struck Mary Jane and they tried to make it like, well, he struck her because, you know, how could he know if he was a clone and he's not the real Spider-Man? And then, you know, he went kind of mental about Peter Parker for a little while, thinking that he was a clone and with the Jackal and all that stuff. So I was not happy with that at all. And, you know, they really didn't resolve it that great. I know they did resolve it great with Ben Reilly died, which, you know, I kind of got used to him as Scarlet Spider, and then I wasn't really crazy with him as Spider-Man, but, and with the web shooters outside, I thought it looked cool, but, you know, in reality, would you put your device on the outside of your uniform to show everybody how you have webs? Probably not. So that was the last time we ever saw that, really. So so many crazy storylines that they had. So many crazy stories. They had one storyline. This is beyond Dr. Octopus, but when Norman Osborn had this cult thing, and they were doing something with these idols or something. I forget what it was, and he wound up going insane because of it. And then, was it Maddie Franklin? Did she get spider powers or something like that? Yeah, I think something like that. Was it Maddie Franklin or was it somebody else? Somebody was. Was that J. Jonah Jameson's niece? I can't remember. But, yeah, and then, I mean, another one I hated was to say that, Norman Osborn raped Gwen Stacy and they had kids and Mary Jane kept a secret from Peter Parker. That was just like, makes me want to throw up in my mouth again, because like, why would, if she loved him, she wouldn't keep that secret from him? And for these adult kids to show up that are older than him because of the rapidly aging goblin formula, that made me like throw up. And especially that the Green Goblin saved the life of his other son, which was the Gray Goblin, I guess. I don't know. Harry Osborn dying to save Peter Parker, that was a biggie, but and then he died, and then there was a whole thing with little Normie. Is he going to become a Green Goblin one day? You know, and Liz was the wife, and then they just, when the timeline got crazy, that all of a sudden out pops Harry Osborn again, and it's just like such a mess, man. I always say I want them to erase the deal, but if they ever did, how would they? I mean, then you would have to erase the good storylines that came after, which, oh, what a headache. What a headache that is. I just want to somehow them to do something with that deal where it's just like, I don't know if the deal is undone or whatever, and oh, bad taste in my mouth with that deal. So, man, and then we had some amazing costumes. I think Web of Spider-Man 100, he had the armor, like the white costume that was protecting him against, I think it was like the Rose and the Hobgoblin, because they do bullets everywhere, so he needed that special spider armor or something. You know, and then there's been some costumes that just been like, you made you shake your head, like, what is that? I mean, you know, it was interesting to have the Iron Spider, you know, costume. We're getting back to the storylines with that I really, I don't know if I loved it or hated it. I mean, the other storyline, I did love it. You know, and it's one of those storylines where, you know, you're kind of at odds because with the other storyline, you had the character Morlun that just was going to not stop until he killed Spider-Man, and he did. But then when he was dying, and then when he saw that Mary Jane was going to get hurt, he killed Morlun or absorbed him, or I guess the way they could explain it is he'll come back at some point, because you can't really say that Peter Parker killed somebody because then that would ruin the record, I guess. But then he was in a cocoon, and then his tonsils were back, according to Reed Richards, and everything was back to normal and rebuilt, and his powers were even more magnified. And then he had to dealing with the Queen, this Queen villain, and after that he didn't need the web shooters anymore. That was interesting. Been so many crazy storylines. Especially the biggest one was when Mary Jane was pregnant. Yes, Peter Parker was married to Mary Jane. She was pregnant. They were going to have a girl, which that's what that whole alternate reality is from Spider-Girl. But anyway, as far as I feel, I mean, he did take the baby. He did take the baby and gave it to that nurse where, you know, of course, in the alternate reality, that was true. But in the real reality, I felt that Norman Osborn did that. I didn't think that he was evil to kill a baby. I thought that he had taken the baby so he could raise the baby to hate her father, Peter Parker, Spider-Man. And notice how I keep saying Peter Parker, Spider-Man, because I feel like I have to, so I don't confuse people, because Doc Ock, Spider-Man now. But yeah, and then that storyline just went freaking sour. I mean, I don't know what happened. I mean, okay, and I'm going to jump around one more time because I like to jump around. Amazing Spider-Man 400 was one of the most amazingest books in history because finally they killed off Aunt May. She just died of old age, and right before she died, she was on the Empire State Building. She was having a final moments with Peter Parker, and she says, "How does it feel swinging throughout the city?" And it just touched me, and it was a great couple of panels. It was great, and he says, "How did you know?" And she's like, "I'm maybe old, but I'm not stupid." And it was like, it felt so good. I mean, that was great, you know. And then they undid the whole thing where, you know, you're thinking that when Peter Parker's going after the Green Goblin, that he's going to finally be reunited with his baby. You know, that we believed Norman Osborn had kidnapped, but he didn't. He kidnapped Aunt May and cloned her and or whatever, and what? The clone died? I mean, as a scientist Peter Parker is, he didn't know that that's really Aunt May. So Aunt May was alive as a prisoner of Norman Osborn, Green Goblin, which was like, really? Okay, so Aunt May was alive, and then we got some good storylines. I mean, we did get the fact that he survived. Like he was just so beat up by Morlun that Aunt May walked in on him like in blood, and she was like, and it was cool that, like, you know, that we got to see. Okay, you know, the real Aunt May knows he's Spider-Man, and this is what happens and stuff like that. But then it, like I said, they went in crazy directions. I mean, I was totally against a 9/11 book because, you know, I did feel that there was no purpose for that. Only because there was no real way to explain it. I mean, you're trying to make a realistic event and you're trying to put it into the books, and you basically say that there's so many heroes in the Marvel Universe that there could be a hero like on every corner or whatever, and then all of a sudden, the day that happened, not one hero was around. I felt it was dangerous territory. I felt it should never have been, that story never should have been told, because they put evil on ground zero, like all these bad guys, and these guys killed thousands of people, and then they're trying to make it like, well, these guys are bad, but they're not as bad as the terrorists. And I was like, come on, really? So, but those are the bad guys, and Doc Doom's upset, like he's crying, like, I mean, oh, for Christ's sake, you know, it's like, I mean, Gwen Stacy really having kids? Oh, come on, really? So, there have been some doozy Spider-Man storylines. I love the storylines. The good points of the clone thing was seeing Gwen Stacy, which, even though it was a clone, it is exciting to see that. I mean, and if you didn't know that too, Peter Parker actually made money. He made a lot of money for something. I forgot. I don't know if it was because of the sale of webs, or like he made a book, Webs, with all his photography. But then there was another thing he made. He worked for some guy, like a protection, like a bodyguard or something. But then he actually took the money to use it in a good way. He made a library, the Gwen Stacy library, which I don't know if they still count that. But so many different things. I mean, this new era with Spider-Man, with Mary Jane owning a nightclub. I mean, I don't know if I'm crazy about that. I mean, it would make sense. J. Jonah Jameson, the mayor of New York City, and that's pretty cool. I mean, you know, but the Daily Bugle being like, bleh, I don't know. So many good storylines have come since the Mephisto deal, and that's what really stinks, is because, you know, you're kind of torn. I mean, I won't sit well until that storyline is somehow. I just want to see. I want to see a storyline where, you know, because supposedly Mephisto can't remember the deal either. So something happens where, because of this timeline, Mephisto is dying or something. I would write that anyway, and you know, he has to get Peter Parker to undo the deal, or yeah. But of course he's dead. So what are you gonna do with that? But so many crazy, crazy Spider-Man storylines. I mean, a lot. I mean, there was even one time that I think he broke his arm was broken. Then he had to make some type of webcast, which that doesn't make any sense to me either. If, as Spider-Man for like 50 years, he knows how to make an intricate pinpoint detail because he has the knowledge. And here's what the thing is: because he was bit by proportionately, because he was bit by a spider with radiation, he has the intelligence as a spider to craft different things with the web. So he was able to create a perfect cast that healed his arm perfectly with the webs. And he has created so many different things over the years. To say that Dr. Octopus would come up with a way to use the webs that he didn't, that is not believable to me. To say that also Peter Parker would get so easily defeated by Doc Ock, that, you know, once again. But we're going to continue upwards and onwards. We're going to see what Dan Slott does with Superior Spider-Man. But I mean, I am glad, because I heard rumblings that Gwen Stacy was going to come back before they did this whole Mephisto deal. Now, I actually loved Gwen Stacy. You know, I went back and I read the comics, and I loved that character. You know, I didn't like what they did with the Mary Jane character, where they had so many damn marriage problems. You know, so many. And it was getting really, it was interfering with the book, I feel. It was. You know, and they didn't want to have them divorced because that was taboo. But here's where I don't understand. You don't want to divorce the characters. You want to make Peter Parker younger, in a sense, where he's not tied to anyone. But then you make him like almost like a professor. He has students, and it was like then you're making him older. So it's like the same argument why you killed Captain America, and then you brought him back anyway. Like, oh, you know, nobody talks like from the 30s, and it's hard to understand him and whatever. And meanwhile, like, you know, you make the guy that is also from the 30s or 40s, Bucky, become Captain America. So that just threw that out the window. I wasn't crazy about killing Captain America off around 9/11 either. But anyway, so many crazy storylines. I mean, there was one point in time where Spider-Man became like a Hulk creature temporarily. You know, 6-arm storyline, that was a crazy, crazy storyline. That was good too. Been a lot of storylines. One of my favorite too. I gotta say this: the powerless storyline, where he gave up his powers with that device, and then he had to take on the villains no matter what, without Spider-Sense, without the agility, without everything. And he had the Black Cat's help, but he actually won. I mean, and the thing was, in the end result, he got his powers back, but the Black Cat lost her powers. And I freaking loved the Black Cat, because the moment that they said, okay, The one thing I did say was I did love Kevin Smith's The Evil That Men Do with the Black Cat. I thought it was great. I was kind of pissed that it was like the most delayed comic in history. I don't know for whatever reason. And then when they brought it back, it made no sense to me. It just was like a jumbled. I don't know what was going on. Which she was in prison, Black Cat. Well, anyway, I loved the character of Black Cat. I mean, I felt, well, you know what? If he's not going to be married to Mary Jane, he needs to be with the Black Cat because, he's not going to get my wish where Gwen Stacy's back to life. So he has to be with the Black Cat. I mean, that is Felicia Hardy, absolutely. And they did some monumental storylines with Felicia Hardy too. My Spider-Man knowledge is really coming out. I mean, they had one of the most touching storylines was when she found out that the Peter Parker she had a relationship with was the clone. And this is where the real, romance, intimacy, private comes in because, it was revealed, I guess, like that she was his, she was his first, I think. Black Cat he was with before he was with anybody else, and then he wasn't with Gwen Stacy or whatever. I don't know. But and then she was hurt because she's like, oh my God, I was with this fake thing, and he felt like terrible, and then she saved him from prison, and then they were together, and like not together, but it was just, I thought that was touching, like they have a bond, those two, and if he's not going to be with Mary Jane, then let him be with the Black Cat, please. But anyway, all these new people, and I don't want to deal with that, but then, I mean, I love the Black Cat. Oh my God, I love the Black Cat. She was so awesome. So many good storylines they had. Black Cat, and she wanted him back so bad at one point in time too that she actually went out with Flash Thompson, and then she started to fall for Flash Thompson, which, who's Flash Thompson now? Isn't he like Venom or something? I gotta really look into that because the last time but then he was a vegetable. But then okay, sorry, he's Venom. Okay, but anyway, so many crazy storylines over the years. I mean, 50 wonderful years of Spider-Man. 50 wonderful years. One of the greatest storylines with Electro was, I think, Light the Night, when he had, he really came into his power as Electro, and he just was like a god. I mean, that was a great Electro storyline. A great Lizard storyline was with Tom McFarlane, with the bells and whatever the thing, and it was Calypso. That was great, and his interpretation of the Hobgoblin when he made Hobgoblin like the Demo Goblin, and think that was really like Sinners and stuff like that. That was really hot when Tom McFarlane did that. I did like the Hobgoblin when he had weapons vans and stuff like that. It was like similar to like the Punisher. When the Punisher had weapons vans and stuff. And then, we weren't sure who the heck Hobgoblin was, Ben Kingsley or Jason McIndale or Philip Ulrich, though he took over as Hobgoblin, yeah. So, crazy storylines with that. Who am I leaving out? I was kind of disappointed that they never brought back the who was the villain? The Wasp? The Wasp. They never made him into a big Spider-Man guy. I mean, it was a human. No, not was it the Human Fly? Was it no, not the Wasp? That's Janet Van Dyne. The Human Fly. They never really made him into a big Spider-Man villain. He appeared a couple times. But yeah, then they shrunk him down that time. High Evolutionary. Yeah, that was a good. The Evolutionary War, when the cover was good, that Gwen Stacy was there, but she was a clone. I mean, so many good Spider-Man storylines over the years. It is believable that, the one thing was crazy was when he revealed his identity to the world. Because you knew that once he did that, everybody was going to gun for him. And, of course, Kingpin had him a shot, which started the whole deal with Mephisto in the first place. Another crazy thing was when, didn't he fight Dr. Octopus in school? Yeah. And then Mephisto was dead, and a demon from hell with half a brain. That was crazy. And I always loved Mysterio. Yeah, I always loved Mysterio, but that was kind of crazy that, Quentin Beck. But then they were saying it was another person, a Jackal agent took over as the Mysterio, did he? Wait, what happened? Evil men, I'm trying to think, the evil that men do, didn't they, somebody was supposed to take over as Mysterio? Then Jack-O-Lantern he was a cool villain too. Oh, you could tell I'm tired. I'm tired with the knowledge, but it's kind of jumbled up. But um, so many years of Spider-Man, 50 years of Spidey, and I just hope that we get to see wonderful things with Dan Slott, and I just really can't wait for Peter Parker to come back and get back to basics, and I do want to see all his villains return in a good way. I mean, I want to see massive freaking storylines with Mysterio, massive freaking storylines with all these guys, you know, and I just can't wait. So I'll be glad. I mean, Superior Spider-Man is a good comic. Check it out. But I'm just going to be waiting for Peter Parker also while I'm getting Superior Spider-Man. Talk to you later. Bye for now.